This episode sponsored by Lake Monster Details, producing the Don's Light and Magic Legacy line of parts, offering upgrade parts and decals for accuracy, special effects, and lighting. Visit www.lakemonsterdetails.com and make it glow. Also sponsored by GCals, producing aftermarket replacement decals and custom quality graphics for your favorite spaceships. Visit www.gcals.company.site and add some personalization to your sci-fi models today. Hey guys, Will here. Welcome to Model from the Engine's Chair. This is going to be the introduction episode for my 1400 scale Enterprise C build. And we're going to talk about in this episode, I want to talk about my plans for this model. I want to also help you understand why I am doing some of the things I'm going to end up doing to this model. And I'm just going to say it's not my favorite model. It's certainly not my favorite Enterprise. I'm sorry. I know we get some hate mail now because I've done insulted people, but it's just not my favorite Enterprise. And I think a lot of that goes back to the fact that it's not the way it appears in the show is not the way Andrew Probert, who designed the Ambassador class, originally intended for it to appear. It looks to, matter of fact, let's look at a picture of Andrew Probert did a painting of his concept painting of his Ambassador class. And when you look at it, it's just way different. To me, it looks a lot more representative of what an intermediary ship should look like between the Excelsior and the Enterprise D, or the Excelsior Class B and the Enterprise D Galaxy class. So, you know, I mean, we can agree to disagree, you know, if you want, but I just think it looks, I like the lines on it a lot better than the way it turned out. But Rick Sternbach, he was kind of pressed for time. They didn't give him a lot of lead time to get the designs done up and get the model built, which was built by Greg Jean. And so he had to cut some corners. You know, if this was done a couple years later, if this episode of Star Trek had taken place several years later, once CGI had been, you know, widely in use, I think we would have gotten the Andrew Probert design, in my opinion. I definitely don't think they would have cut the corners, because the main reason that Rick Sternbach cut the corners was because it just would have taken too long to work out the angles and all that in designing it. So he squared up a lot of things. The saucer section, which was supposed to be more oval like the D, ended up being circular around like the Enterprise B and everything before that, of course. And so did the secondary hull. It also ended up being more conical in shape. So the model is a lot different in the show than what Rick Sternbach had originally intended. And if you look back, I think the only place it appeared before yesterday's Enterprise where the model was used, I think the only place it appeared was on a set of gold ships that were displayed on the wall in, I think, the briefing room or the ready room, one of the two, I can't remember. But it was there, and that's the only place you really saw it up until yesterday's Enterprise premiered. And I can remember back in 1990, I think it was like February or that, I remember it being a little after Christmas, when this episode premiered, I was excited for it. I was like, oh, the Enterprise C. And then the Enterprise C came out of the time warp thing there. And it just wasn't exactly, I was still excited, don't get me wrong. It just wasn't what I was expecting. You know, I was looking at something a little different, especially, you know, haven't seen that relief on the wall, and it just looked different. But at any rate, it is what it is. Rick Sternbach, he didn't have a lot of time, so he had to make compromises and then pass it off to Greg Jean, who built the Ambassador class model. Now, before I get into anything else, there are two different opinions about what happens after yesterday's Enterprise. So there is one theory that Greg Jean had made multiple copies of the Ambassador class model, and the one that appeared in the episodes Data's Day, I think it was the Zukov, appeared in Redemption 2, I think, briefly, and then appeared. Second most popular appearance was Yamaguchi, which I don't understand because that was an emissary and it appeared there for like, what, 10 seconds? But at any rate, it is what it is. And actually, the models that I do have the original, I think this came out in 1999, the original 1400 release of the Enterprise C. And I also have the clear version of the Yamaguchi, which is basically the same model, but there are some differences between this and the original 1704C release. So this one also came out in 99, and the only thing I couldn't get my hands on was, I believe there was a re-release in 2011, 2012, somewhere around there. But I could not find any of those anywhere available. So I'm going to go buy these. There are a couple things that I need guys that, anybody that's had experience with the re-release to kind of cue in on and maybe make a comment below. And let us know what the differences are, because there are a couple of things in here that I think may be in the new release that weren't in the original Enterprise release. So we'll talk about that when we get to it. But at any rate, there's two different theories about this. One is that Greg Jean had built several different models, which he was known for. It's known that when he did the 3-foot Excelsior, or not Excelsior, but Enterprise B, or not Enterprise B, the Excelsior. When he did the 3-foot Excelsior for the flashback episode for Voyager, it's known that he did 12 additional models, but Greg Jean only tended to light the hero model, the model that was intended to be used in the show. So your other models that he tended to make were just static displays typically. They weren't lighted. But at any rate, if you go to, and I'll put the link for this so you can go and read both articles and decide for yourself. If you read the article on X Astris Scientia, I don't know how you pronounce it, but I'll put the link down below. Their belief is that there were multiple models made, and that the models used after yesterday's Enterprise were all different models from that original Enterprise C model. But the only source they quote is 2 usernames off of a forum, no background on these users, what their background is, how they come across it, how they know this information, and basically you've got the fact that Greg Jean was known to make additional models. Nothing supporting that. On the other hand, if you go to Memory Alpha's website, and I'll put that link down below as well, their article talks about it was the original Enterprise C model that was heavily modified by Greg Jean for the following episodes that it was used in. And there are at least two production staff that have said this, that have said that Greg Jean. Now, Greg Jean, I don't know if he himself has gone on the record as to whether or not he did or didn't build models. But the reason why I believe that these are all the original model is because of the auctions. There have been 2 auctions of the Enterprise C model, which is labeled as the Yamaguchi now. There have been 2 auctions, one by Christie's, and in both auctions they list the Yamaguchi model as being used as the Enterprise C in yesterday's Enterprise. Now, Christie's does not go lightly on verifying information. They're not going to post something without thoroughly vetting it. If there was any questions to whether that model was originally used as yesterday's Enterprise, they probably would have sought Greg Jean's response to that, or somebody with Paramount that knows for a fact that this was the Enterprise C model that was used. So the fact that Christie's auction labels this model as being used in yesterday's Enterprise, and also the second one, which was I can't remember which auction house it was, but the second one also labeled it as the model from yesterday's Enterprise that had been changed. So I tend to believe this is the same Enterprise C model. So read the articles, make your own decision, but keep in mind those auctions, they don't play around with information. So I tend to believe that the model that we see that I'm going to try to show examples of is the same model through all episodes. So at any rate, that's where I'm at with that. And that model was, like I said, was auctioned off at Christie's to somebody, I can't remember the name. And then that person passed away and the family auctioned it off again in, I think, 2014 or 2015. So now it belongs to somebody else. And hopefully I'll get to catch it on a tour here at some point. Maybe they'll send on a tour. It was on a tour at one point and it got damaged, and they ended up fixing it. We'll talk about some of the changes to that. But at any rate, so if we're going to talk about building this model and trying to make sure that it's true to the Enterprise C, there's a couple other things we need to look at. And I've done some comparisons of the model from when it was Enterprise C all the way up to the Yamaguchi. So let's take a look at, I've got a saucer, the top of the saucer comparison to look at. We'll start with that. And what you can see is the top is the battle damaged Enterprise C that was used. And that battle damage, it looks like it's dimensional, but it's really just painted on, and the scorch marks they created by using fireworks, sparklers, stuff like that. Lighting them off on the hull. But so that stuff could have easily been painted over. Wasn't that as much damage as it looks like is in the model. But a couple differences that we see here, all the way down the bottom, or actually the second picture is I believe the Yamaguchi, and the third picture down the bottom is actually when it was the Zhukov. Now the only reason I've got the Zhukov on here is because if you look at that paneled area behind the bridge, and if you look at that middle picture of the Yamaguchi, I'm talking about that panel that's kind of semi-triangular shaped. It's got the 3 white squares or rectangles on it, and the 4 white rectangles and the 4 gray squares on it. That piece actually removes. That's where one of the mounting points was for the model, and so that's why when you look up at the Enterprise C model, you see that piece is missing, but you can see the wires coming out, and there's actually a picture floating around somewhere I saw where there's a rod in there where it was mounted. And so that's one of the mounting points for the Enterprise C. But the only reason I've got the Zhukov on here is because you'll notice that between the Zhukov and the Yamaguchi, those panels are different. You've got all, it looks like pretty much white rectangles on that part in the bottom picture, which is the Zhukov. But you've got the white rectangles with gray squares for the Yamaguchi. And that was the same for the Enterprise C model. There's those 4 white rectangles and those 4 gray squares. That was the same for the Enterprise model. So, and that's why I've got that CGI picture on the right, because it was missing in all the pictures I found of the actual studio model of the Enterprise C. So I don't remember who did this. I apologize, but who did this CGI rendering? But that's basically, you can't see the white squares because they're kind of darker there, but I think they're vents or something. Is what they look like. But all right, so that's one of the changes there between three different changes right there. 2 changes in on that particular part. But then the biggest change you see is from the Enterprise C to the Zhukov and Yamaguchi. You'll notice that there's additional lifeboats directly behind that piece we're talking about, behind the bridge on the top of the saucer section there. You see there's additional 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lifeboats there, and then 2 additional lifeboats below that, more towards the aft of the saucer. So they added lifeboats, and then on the top of, I guess that's the BC deck, or maybe just the C deck, I don't know. You see that they have removed the large lifeboats and put all these small ones here, and they've also put a transporter emitter on either side of that. So that's a change from the Enterprise C to the Yamaguchi. So on the Enterprise C, there were just lifeboats around that part. So that's a bit of a difference there. So the rest of the top of the saucer looks like it's pretty much the way that it's supposed to be, or the way that it was originally on the Enterprise C. So the main changes are just around that bridge area, and then those lifeboats added at the back on top of the saucer. And again, if I miss anything, if you guys are watching this and you see, oh, well, what about this? I can't promise I've covered everything. I'll do my best. But all right, so let's look at the bottom of the saucer. So the bottom of the saucer, you can see the 2 pictures. The top is the Enterprise C model, and the bottom is the Yamaguchi. So you'll notice on the Enterprise C, there were no lifeboats on the bottom of the saucer. But they did add them for the Zhukov and Yamaguchi. They were added to the bottom. You can see them there in that photo. Also, you'll notice on the bottom that the lower sensor dome is different on each one. The Enterprise was just a simple round, I think it had a glowing dome on the bottom there, and the one on the Yamaguchi is more reminiscent of the Excelsior lower sensor dome. So that's a difference there. And I think that's pretty much it for the bottom. I think the rest of the bottom has pretty much stayed the same. The phaser strips are the same. The windows all look pretty much the same. I don't think they really made any changes to the windows in these. So That's pretty much it for the bottom of the saucer. There's not a whole lot of change there. And then let's take a look at the dish. On the dish, you'll see up the top the Enterprise C. Seems like it's more of a flush fit, whereas down the bottom on the Yamaguchi it pokes out a little bit more, and it's also got a I think it's like a copper colored disc in the middle there. So that, you know, I could see that. That's kind of more of a step between the Enterprise B and the D. You know, to have that disc in the middle there. So that part I kind of agree with. I like that they did that. I think that's a little closer. But other than that, that's pretty much the only difference with the dish. It sticks out. It's got a little more of a bulge on it. But I think the actual front of the hull there is a little shorter on the Yamaguchi. I think that area, if you look at like where the neck comes down just above the dish there, I think if you look at it from a different angle, it's not easy to see in this picture. It looks like they may have brought that back and just stuck the dish out a little bit more. Hey, sorry about that, guys. I've been recording a lot on this video camera, and I neglected to clear the memory out after I transferred the files to my computer, so it just shut off on me. So sorry about that break, but let's get back into it. So I was just getting ready to talk about the pylons, or not the pylons, but the nacelles. And that actually looks like a comparison here we can take a look at. And actually, when you look at this comparison, I did this for two reasons. One is you can see that different cap on the front of the nacelles, that red bussard on the front there. It's different. The Enterprise C was just the dome, and on both the Zhukov and on the Yamaguchi, you see that it's got kind of a cowling added to it. And, you know, it kind of brings it more in line, I guess, with the D. And so there's a difference there. And also you'll notice on the pylons themselves that they're shorter in these three different pictures. The top one is as the Enterprise C. The middle one is the Yamaguchi. And you can see that they shortened it a bit from the Enterprise C to the Yamaguchi. Not a lot, but it's shortened. It's noticeable. You can tell by those two kind of darkish bluer panels there. You can see the top edge of them in the Enterprise C under the pylon or under the nacelle there, but they kind of run up into the nacelle on the Yamaguchi model there. And then if you look at that bottom one, I believe they did that because when the left side, the port side, was damaged, they had to shorten it, I think, to fix it. So they shortened the starboard side as well. And that picture there is actually from the auction. I think that might be from the Christie's auction, or that might have been from the more recent one, I'm not sure. But anyway, you can see that they were shortened there. But that last bottom one there really isn't anything to do with Canon. It's basically they just did it to fix it, to auction it off. And so at any rate, you can see the difference in the pylon height there. And the other thing to mention here too, while we're looking at this kind of this side view, and I think I've got another photo for it, they moved the saucer back a little bit. I don't know an exact measurement, but it was moved probably on the model itself, not much, but I don't know. I want to say it's a couple meters or something. I don't know metrics, and that's what it was explained in. And so anyway, the saucer was moved back a little bit on the neck there, and I do think I have a picture that's going to show the difference there. But in addition to that, you can see that they moved the nacelles backwards on the pylon. And you can tell that because in the top picture you see where the nacelle is connecting to the, sitting on top of the pylon there. You've got that little bulge under there that the pylon attaches to. Well, if you look in the picture down below that of the Yamaguchi, you can see it sits further forward on that bulge. So they moved the nacelles back in correspondence with moving the saucer section back as well. So that is another change that they made on that. Let's see, on the aft. Take a look at the aft section here on the top of the secondary. You can see that one of the big differences here is that the Enterprise C was more conical in shape on top there, and you can see on the bottom there at the Yamaguchi that it's been widened out where the shuttle bay, especially back at the end where the shuttle bay is, that shuttle bay has been kind of widened out a bit. And they've also added transporter emitters to either side and also some additional lifeboats that don't look like they appear on the Yamaguchi. So that back section has had quite a bit of work done to it. Like I said, it's widened out on the back there, and lifeboats have been added, and it looks like there might be lifeboats on the top of the secondary hull. I can't tell for sure from this angle, but at any rate, definitely they've added lifeboats to the top of the pylons there where they come out from the side of the secondary hull, and they also added those transporter emitters. So those are some differences there. Also, you'll notice that the Starfleet emblem on top of the nacelles wasn't present on the Enterprise C model, but it is on the Yamaguchi model. So something to think about. And the last thing I want to take a look at is the underside of the secondary hull. You'll notice that they've added at the bottom there, the picture of the Yamaguchi model, they added to the back of the secondary hull what looks like a piece, basically a version of the shuttle bay from the Excelsior is what it looks like they attached to the bottom there. So that's a bit of a change, and other than that, everything else looks the same. But I want you to keep in mind the bottom of the secondary hull here, just in front of where they've got the mount attached, where you see that Starfleet emblem on the Yamaguchi. I want you to keep that in mind because we're going to talk about that area here in a little bit when we do a review of the model, the models we've got here. So, and you can also look too, if you notice up there at the back of the saucer, you'll see the top picture as the Enterprise C. It's flush, where that part juts out above the impulse engine there. It's flush with that, or actually it sits forward a little bit of that. But on the Yamaguchi, it sits back. The saucer actually extends out a little bit from the back of that section. So you can tell there that the saucer's been moved. And if you look at the darker blue ring on the saucer, that first dark blue ring that circles the lower sensor dome, I cut it out of the top picture, but you can see if you look at these pictures online, the Enterprise C, you can see that front of the neck actually ends right at the edge of that. But then on the Yamaguchi, it actually extends into that blue ring a little bit. So you can definitely tell that they've moved the neck back a little bit. And there's the differences that I've noticed on the Enterprise C. I think I've covered everything. Like I said, if I forgot something, please chime in and let me know, but I think that covers for the most part the changes that were made. Now we can look at this one of two ways. You can look at it as the first Enterprise C model is the only way the Enterprise C can appear, or we can assume that because Greg Jean is the one that made the modifications, that these are things that he would have done if he had had more time with the model before it had to appear in yesterday's Enterprise. There's additional lifeboats on the bottom of the saucer, the added transporter emitters, things like that. We can, assume that if you had more time, he would have made these changes. So it's up to you which way you want to look at this. When I talk about the models themselves that I've got here, I'm going to talk about, some of the differences that are there. There are actually there's at least one that AMT did to these models that doesn't appear on either of the studio models, so I don't know what's going on there. But at any rate, let me get these models set up. We'll take a look at them, go over the differences, and figure out what I want to do, what course I want to take on these. So give me a minute, I'll put you on the bench, and we'll get to work. Alright guys, the first thing I want to do is just basically take a look at, let's look at the instruction pamphlets here, because I noticed a couple odd differences between these two. Now the Pro Shop one of the Yamaguchi is intended to be lighted, so obviously it's going to have instructions for doing the lights and running the wires and that. Now I'm not going to use the, I think these are grain of wheat bulbs or something, but I'm not going to use these to light the ship. I am going to do my own lighting, and I've actually got some other stuff I've bought already that I'm going to add to it, so we'll talk about that in a minute. But I forgot to mention too that the big difference between these two models is that the Yamaguchi is molded in clear plastic, and the Enterprise C model is not. It's molded in kind of an off-white styrene, or off-white plastic. So we'll take a look at these saucers here in a minute, but I forgot to mention that this model is molded in clear, which is a pretty cool thing to have. Makes it a little easier to light. Maybe. We'll talk about that in a minute. But anyway, you'll see a lot of this has to deal with wiring and getting the lights done. But one thing I noticed on this is that, let's see, they have on the paint, the weird thing between these two, on the paint instructions. It's funny, you'll notice that these instructions for the Yamaguchi, for the paint, actually show the Enterprise C lower sensor dome. Meanwhile, the instructions for the Enterprise C actually show the Yamaguchi lower sensor dome. So I thought that was kind of odd. I'm like, okay, well, why did they have the wrong sensor domes on each one? But at any rate, other than that, I think the instructions are pretty straightforward. I haven't noticed anything else yet, but I haven't really sat here and gone through them either. Notice that this does talk about removing, you basically the way they want you to do this is to light block the entire saucer, and then after you've done all your painting, come back and scratch out the windows. I'm not doing that. I've got another idea, and we'll talk about that when we get to that part. But at any rate, that was the main thing I noticed that was just odd about the instructions, is that one shows the part for the other kit. Each one shows the part for the other kit for the lower sensor dome. So at any rate, let's take a look at the model itself. And these were both sealed. Not anymore. I don't buy models to collect them. I buy them and build them. So I am taking everything out of plastic as you are seeing me do it. We got our secondary hulls molded in clear, and our upper saucer molded in clear, and our lower saucer. Now, I will show you some things, a couple things I'm going to talk about here. Some differences with this. These are the same mold, so there's no difference between these two molds, the saucer or the lower or the secondary hull. They are both the same. Oh, let me get one of the secondary hull. They are both the same molds. So as far as the model kit itself goes, the main components, it appears that they are no different. They are all the same. So the only difference with this kit is that for the Yamaguchi, it does provide the additional parts to add the lifeboats to the back section here. And let me see if I can grab those real quick and I'll show them to you. Now this is one part where I kind of need some feedback from guys that maybe have built the reissued one that came out as to whether or not they started including these with that reissue, because I had seen some of the a copy of the instructions posted online for the re-release, and it showed the lower sensor dome for the Yamaguchi. Even though it was labeled, the box was labeled as Enterprise C, but I didn't see anything on the box that said you can build either or. So if you guys have done that re-release, please let me know so we can let everybody else know. But so here we go. Let's see. We've got this tree. Oh, okay. This is kind of a mess. Look at how this is molded like that. At any rate, so you can see back here, these are the additional pieces to add the lifeboats. And it looks like the transporter emitters to the back section of the hull here. And let's look at the instructions. Now, those transporter emitters that we're adding on to the saucer. Okay, so here's our top schematic of the saucer. Oh, get that up in the camera. And we are adding these additional lifeboats and these two parts back here, which look like the transporter emitters. So we are adding those on there. Now, I did say that these molds are exactly the same, so that means that the bridge, the surrounding part around the bridge on both of these is the same, which means you've actually got the lifeboats set up for. Let's see, is this for? This back section here is actually the same on the Yamaguchi Enterprise C, so that's no different. This part up here, though, is different around the bridge here on the Yamaguchi. There's smaller lifeboats around, kind of like what you see up on the top here. they took out these lifeboats, and there's not as many. And I think there's only one lifeboat up here on each side. And they've got a bunch of smaller lifeboats around the front here. So this is actually for the Enterprise C, not the Yamaguchi. But for the Yamaguchi model, of course, it's the same. So you just got to suck it up and deal with it, Buttercup, I guess. Unless you, I mean, what you could do is you could sand these off and then get you some styrene and change this to make that more closely resemble the actual Yamaguchi setup. But that's one change. It's the changes I see on the top of the saucer section there. And on the bottom, like we already talked about, for the Enterprise C, they didn't have these lifeboats on the bottom of the studio model. Again, this stuff is again, whether or not you're in the camp of, well, you know, Greg Jean would have put these on there if he had more time. That's why he did it later. Because there was never really any explanation given by Greg Jean that I'm aware of as to why he made all these changes to the models after yesterday's Enterprise. So I'm likely to think that this is just something he would have done if he had had more time to do it. So I don't plan to sand these off. I'm going to leave these on there. It's not correct to the studio model, but again, like I said, it depends on, I'm going to lean towards that camp of Greg Jean made these changes because that's what he would have done if he had had more time from the studio to do this model the way he wanted. So I'm going to leave those alone. I'm not going to worry about sanding those off. And because I'm doing Enterprise C, of course, the lifeboats on top don't matter because that's exactly the way they're supposed to be. We also have the lower sensor dome for the Yamaguchi in the Yamaguchi kit that's clear. And let's see, on the Enterprise C model, we've got, I haven't taken all these parts out the pack, but I believe this is part of the lower sensor dome. I think there's a clear part that just sticks in there. So we've got the correct parts for each one there. The Yamaguchi has its correct lower sensor dome. And so that's pretty much it for the saucer section. Let's talk about the secondary hull real quick. Now the secondary hull, there's a couple things. I'm going to put a picture up to show this. Let me just show you on the opaque version here because it's going to be easier to see. Now, where's my pointer at? See if I can dig my pointer out of here. Alright, now on the model here, and hopefully the light's not washing this out too bad, but you'll notice these rows of windows on the secondary hull here. On this model, there are only 7 levels of windows, 7 rows of windows. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now I'm going to put a picture up and show you the studio model, and this is the same for the Yamaguchi and for Enterprise C. We're actually missing a row of windows here, and you can see I've numbered them 1 through 8. You'll also notice, looking at these windows, that they don't follow, unlike this model here that AMT did, they don't follow the panel lines. Now, I like that the model here follows the panel lines, even though it doesn't make much sense because you're not going to have, especially towards the front here where this panel line curves down, well, the deck's not going to curve down like that, which I think is why, I would think is probably why Greg Jean did the models not following the panel lines, because it just doesn't make any real sense that these windows at that floor is going to curve down towards the dish section. That's not going to happen. So I don't know about that yet. I'm still debating that. I do like that they follow the panel lines the rest of the way, but I don't like that this front dips down, because that, if this is deck 22, whatever it is, I don't know what it is off the top of my head, and I'm sure somebody's going to shout and say, oh no, that's deck 31. I don't know. But this deck is not going to curve. You're not going to start walking downhill towards the dish. So I tend to go more with the studio model on this, and the way that Greg Jean has these laid out. And I'll put a picture up of it. But these windows kind of come up and go off a little bit up this way. And there's a row of windows that's missing. The windows usually come up on the original studio model. They come up close just below the neck of the interconnecting dorsal here. Just below the neck, they run up this way, and they continue down, and then you've got, like I said, you've got 8 rows. Now on the model here, the row they actually left off, if you look at the picture, is numbered row number 7, and it's a short row of windows. That's the row that they left off this model. So this is one of those things where you got to decide how far down the rabbit hole do you want to go. That's a lot of work to add in. I mean, to add the row of windows in isn't a big deal. I'm going to drill all these out anyway. The ideal I have on how to do my windows is I'm going to drill these out, and I'm going to fill them in with my UV resin. Let me find my other half of the secondary hull work. Because, unlike Boyd over Trekworks, I suck at drilling windows. And you can see these are already all messed up. This is just terrible looking. So I think what I'm going to do is oversize these windows, fill them in with UV resin, let it cure real good, sand them flush, because I like flush mount windows anyway. That's the way I did my original series Enterprise, if you've seen that build. I filled in all my windows with UV resin and sanded them flush with the hull. That's the way I like my windows. I don't like putting the plastic windows in and they sit back, and sometimes to varying degrees they sit back away from the edge. I just don't like that. Plus, doing it that way with the UV resin and then sanding it flush, I don't have to worry about diffusion. That sanding the window is automatically going to give me all the diffusion I need for that, pretty much. So that's what I'm thinking I'm going to do. That way I can add these windows and I can fill these in, which I already started drilling and sucked at, and do them properly, because what I need to do is move these up. These all need to move up all the way down to this row here. It needs to move up, and then that shorter row of windows needs to come in here somewhere. I'm just going to have to deal with where these windows are, because I really don't want to sand these lifeboats off and then have to redo them. But at any rate, we'll look at that more when I get to that point. We'll go over, whatever I decide to do, whatever I decide to work out with it. But what I'm going to do is fill these in, like I said, with clear resin, the UV resin, and I've already made, I did buy the masking set from Orbital Dry Dock, from Aztec Dummy. Aztec Dummy does put out a set of Ambassador class painting templates for all those different colors that you're going to have to do on the hull, which I think is one of the great challenges of this model. Is on the refit you've got the Aztecs, on this one you've got that paint scheme, which these are really going to help get done right. So I do have this. Also, should make my sponsors happy. I am using. I have already requested from Cass over at Lake Monster Details a set of the DLM Legacy parts for the Bussard and Warp chiller grills. I'll talk about those when I get to the Bussards in a minute. But I've ordered those parts, and also from Gus over at GCals, because this model was so old and the decals are kind of, the backing's yellowed. I don't trust that. From Gus over at GCals, he produces a set of these that are really nice, and I'm waiting on those, so I will be using his set instead of these. And this is actually the set from the Yamaguchi, which gives you the option to use the Yamaguchi, Excalibur. Kind of surprised it doesn't give you the option for the other one, but it gives you the option for those. Just look at this real quick. However, the Enterprise C one does not. It just gives you the decals for the Enterprise C. So actually, this one here is the one I've got a remake, or I've ordered from Gus over GCals, and we'll take a look at those when they come in. But at any rate, so I ordered those paint masks from Aztec Dummy, but they don't come with window masks, and these are really small windows, and I don't like the idea of coming in and scratching the paint out. I just don't. I just think it's a lot of work. Not that this is really much better, but what I want to do is fill these in with UV resin, sand them flush, and use my masks. I've made masks, and I'll peel one off here real quick to show you. I have a Cricut machine that lets me print my own vinyl masks. If I can get that to come off. You can see how small that is. So my Cricut machine, I've already worked up a set of masks, and now it's sticking on my finger. That's all right. Don't matter. I was just putting that on there to show you. I've already worked out a set of masks to mask all these windows on the secondary hull. I've got to do them yet for the saucer, but I'll have these done up, and that way I can just put these masks where I want the light to show through, paint it, and when I pull those mats off, I'll get light where I want to. That way it makes it a little bit easier to relocate these windows too, especially since I've already drilled these out some. I can drill them out, fill them in, and then I don't have to worry about it. I could use the, now you may be thinking, why don't you just use the clear cast part? Well, the reason I'm not using this is because it's already got the indentions where the windows go. So I'm gonna have to, if I decide I'm gonna go and change these windows to more closely match the studio model, I'm gonna have to fill these in and sand them anyway. So I don't really want to piece out this model. I know I've seen, oh God, I can't remember, somebody did one where they, it may have been over at Colt TV Man, I'm not sure which one it was, but somebody did one where they mixed clear pieces with the opaque pieces from these two models. I don't want to do that. I want to keep these models separate, just in case I don't build this one somewhere down the road. I get interested in selling it, and I just don't want to swap out the parts. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stick to this, the opaque version here, and just kind of try to drill these windows out, and we'll go about it that way and see how that works out. So at any rate, let's see, that's pretty much the secondary hull. And you'll notice, one thing you'll notice about this secondary hull too is that it's modeled after the Zukov and the Yamaguchi, because this part is way wider in the back than what it would be if it was the Enterprise C model. So I am not going to go through the task of resizing this, because I would have to make this smaller, I would basically have to cut this out, run another piece of styrene, and redo all this, and I'm not doing that. I'm just going to jump onto the bandwagon camp of, oh, this is what Greg Jean would have intended if he had more time with the original Enterprise C model. So I'm not going to go back and rework all that. And this is lacking the lifeboats back here too that are on the Yamaguchi model. So keep that in mind if you're trying to do the Yamaguchi, because like I said, the Yamaguchi model that I have is the same mold, and I don't know that it comes with quite a few lifeboats, so you probably have enough to add them on back here. So as far as the secondary hull, that's pretty much that. Let's look at these pylons now. I know this video is going a little long, but I kind of want to do an in-depth review of both of these, so you know what you're getting into and you know what you're buying. But just want to make sure these are the same. Open this bag up here. Don't lead anybody astray. I'm pretty sure that they didn't change the height of the pylons on these. No, these are the exact same. So this looks like they've cut these. These are the way they appear on the Yamaguchi, because these are touching. Looks like they're going to be touching, these two panels here are going to be touching the bottom of the nacelle, and that's not the way they appeared on the Enterprise C. They made this change for the Zukov and Yamaguchi. So there's kind of an intermix here of different versions of which model they used to make this model. These again are not present on the Enterprise C, they are from the Yamaguchi. Again, I'm not going to mess with those because I'm just going to be in the camp of, hey, that's what Greg Jean intended. And then they do, they've got this part in the opaque version too. They do give you this. If you want to do, I guess if you want to try to do some version of the Yamaguchi, you'd have to sand this part, this lip off here, and I think this part just goes in place of it here. But yeah, they give you this part here. This is the part that kind of looks like they took it from the Excelsior or something. It looks a lot like that part. It's a little different, but it looks a lot like that part off the Excelsior. At least it had some influence on that part, it looks like. But so at any rate, the pylon height is similar to the Yamaguchi version of the model, not the Enterprise C, but you know, again, not going to do a whole lot of work to try to get that raised up a little bit. It'll be fine just like that. So going with that, and then I guess the last thing to talk about here is the nacelles themselves. Now I did order the parts that are going to go in here to light this up from Cass over at Lake Monster Details. And the thing about it is, where is the bustard? Give me 1 second here. Get the bustard out of here because I want to show you this. It's not. These are all your parts for the warp. But this one, for the Yamaguchi, they didn't do the cowlings on these. These are just the same parts that come with the Enterprise C. The parts that Cass has that are the DLM Legacy parts, he's got 2 versions of this. He's got this piece here, and then he's got the one that has the cowling on it. So he's going to send me one of each of those, both sets, so I can show them to you. When they come in, I'll show them to you. But the one has the cowling, so all you got to do is paint it. And what they want you to do with the Zukov model here is just paint a paint a hood over this. Basically, there's no depth to it or that. Really, the only thing you can do with this for this Yamaguchi model is get a piece of styrene and cut it out and try to make a cowling over it. But kind of disappointed they didn't do more with that part. And they did include the correct dish for the Yamaguchi. For the, get my clear parts. Let's take a look at this. For the Enterprise C, you get this dish, which is a little concave. And this dish for the Yamaguchi is flatter. So, but it also has the space for the disc, and I think there's a opaque part that glues in there for that disc in the middle. So you do get the correct dishes, deflector dishes for these. So that's good to see. I think that's pretty much it for the clear parts. Now we do need to talk about, let's see on this part here, the part coming from Cass. The reason why I want to use that is because, one, it's a great part. It's already blue. And the other great thing is, for these, the part that comes with it for the chiller grills, the blue grills, grab these out, come in 2 parts. So you basically have to glue these together to get your part, but what's going to happen is you're going to have a seam back here. And there's not really a whole lot you can do to get rid of that seam because it's a clear part. So the great thing about the parts, one of many great things about the parts Cass is sending me for this, there's no seam on the back here. It's one continuous flowing piece. So it's going to look nice when you light it. It also makes it easier to diffuse it because there's a piece in there that kind of helps to diffuse the light and helps spread it out evenly. So that's really going to look nice. So can't wait for those parts to come in, and we'll take a look at those when they come in. I think that's pretty much it for that. The only other thing I want to mention, I did mention that there was something AMT did to this model that was not on either of or any of the studio models, and that is they added a phaser bank down here on the secondary hull. Now, I can understand that, makes sense. Why wouldn't they have a phaser bank down here? But it's not on either of the models. Therefore, I will be filling this in. I will not be putting the phaser bank here because the only exceptions I will make to any changes to this is if Greg Jean himself had done it to the studio model. So other than the fact that these windows go along the panel lines, I don't know what I'm going to do with that yet. But there was never a phaser strip on the bottom of the Zukov, the Yamaguchi, or the Enterprise C. So I don't know why AMT felt the need, let's look at the instructions, felt the need to put a phaser strip. Let's see, where does it show the application of the phaser strip at? Oh, right here. I don't know why they felt the need to add a phaser strip down there that was not on the original studio models. So anyway, it's up to you. You can just put that part on there if you want. I'm not. I'm going to fill that in because, like I said, I don't agree with that being changed by the model company. You know, if Greg Jean had added that, fine, but that's just my opinion of it. But anyway, other than that, that's pretty much it. There was a difference with the Impulse engine color. The Enterprise C was blue, but everything else after that, the Zukov, the Yamaguchi, they were all red after that. And because Canon, most impulses are red, except for the NX01, which I'm still working on Brian's NX01. I'm waiting for the decals from Gus. He's getting ready to send me some samples to take a look at, and hopefully we're getting close to getting that. But other than the NX01, which I can understand being a different color because it's the first shipping line, maybe as, you know, they were testing a lot of things out. But I don't see the reason to go from red on the refit on the Enterprise B to go into blue on this and then back to red on the D. So I'm going to make this red because that's just what I prefer. The impulse engine will be red. I will have red impulse engines in a blue deflector dish. So anyway, guys, I think that's pretty much it. I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover in this preview. A lot of work ahead of me. I've got to, it may be a little bit before I actually start producing the videos on this. I've got to finish up my Airwolf model. I'm just about done with that. And whenever I get the decals, when Gus gets done perfecting his decals, they are a work of art. When he gets done with those and I can get Brian's model finished up and get that done with, I'll have to take a break from doing this one to finish that because I want to get his model to him. So anyway, other than that, I think that's it. I'll have a first build video out here at some point, hopefully within the next month. Maybe I'll get it out in time for Thanksgiving so everybody can give thanks for the models they are about to receive. But anyway, guys, I appreciate everybody that's been watching my videos and subscribing. I think I just surpassed 550 subscribers. I am excited about that. I'm glad that people are watching these videos and finding them useful. Please let me know down the bottom if you found anything in particular useful. And you don't have to subscribe, but please, I appreciate every subscriber I get. Hit that subscribe button down below. And if you want the notifications for every time I put out a video, please hit that bell. Click that bell icon as well, and you'll get the notifications whenever I put out a new one. So that is it for this episode, guys. It's been a little long, a lot to go over, a lot to do on this model. So please stay with me. Chime in from time to time and let me know what you think. But until next time, guys, keep modeling.